Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, it is Dean Meadows here with you for another episode of Dean's Dialogue in association with the Daily Apologist. And before we get into today's material, today's episode, just a couple of news and notes that I like to call it. If you have not subscribed to our newsletter that comes out weekly, then comes out monthly, and you're interested in doing that and you're asking, hey, where can I go to subscribe? Just go over to thedailyapologist.com, hit the subscribe button, put in your email, and you'll be added to the list. One of the things that we're going to try and do is to keep you up to date as often as possible with what's transpired in the week, what's happened this month, and then also future things that are coming down the line. And speaking of things that are really awesome and things that are absolutely interesting, if you haven't gone to thedailyapologist.com and checked out Jack Lipsy's new podcast called CultureCast, you need to. It is absolutely awesome. Jack has done a very good job with that first episode. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You just got to go over there and check it out. And then also in September 14th, there's going to be a new program here on Dean's Dialogue, and it's going to involve Dr. Ralph Gilmore from Freed-Hardeman, who has done debates before with skeptics, with atheists. Recently, most recent debate was with Alex Rosenberg from Duke University at Ohio State University. Did an excellent job there, and that program is going to be called Reasoning with Ralph, which means I'm going to interview Dr. Gilmore, and basically what we're going to do, guys, is you guys write in the questions, and I'm just going to throw them to Dr. Gilmore, and he's going to go ahead and he's going to answer those. So if you have any questions at all, this is what you need to do. You need to go to your email and you need to send your email, your question, to thedailyapologist@gmail.com. You got a little bit less than a month to do that. We want your questions because we want to answer them. So remember, if you have a question, go ahead and write that to thedailyapologist@gmail.com. And I am just super excited, super honored to have this opportunity with Dr. Gilmore, because I know that he's impacted, my walk. I know that he's impacted a lot of people at Freed-Hardeman, and I know he's impacted a lot of people in the kingdom. So you don't want to miss out on that. That's going to start September 14th, and we're going to go once a month, after that. So those are the news and notes about some of the new things that are happening at the Daily Apologist. All right, let's get into the program. So the last time that we got together, we talked about the manuscript evidence for the New Testament, and we noted that as far as transmission goes, the New Testament has been accurately transmitted, 99.5% accurate, as it's been copied from scribes and copyists from the first century to the very last one that we've dug up and we've found. So today we're going to look at more evidence for the reliability of the New Testament manuscripts, and specifically address an issue regarding the variants that is very popular, that will probably be used by every skeptic that you come in contact with. And it's an argument about the number of variants throughout the manuscripts. And so, as I've said before on the show, when it comes to doing damage to young adults' faith in the church, it's not Richard Dawkins, it's not Sam Harris, it's not Daniel Dennett, it's not even the late Christopher Hitchens that I think has done the most damage. Bart Ehrman has done the most damage, I believe, to young people's faith, more so than anybody else in the last decade. And not that Bart Ehrman would attach himself to the four horsemen of the new atheist movement. Bart Ehrman's an agnostic. So why is he? Why do I say this? And that's because, unlike Dawkins, unlike Harris, unlike Dennett, and other prominent skeptics, Bart Ehrman is an expert in textual criticism. These other guys are not. And so what Bart does is he doesn't make a philosophical argument on the basis of philosophy of mind. He's not going to make an argument against the soul, for instance, out of philosophy of mind. He's not going to talk about biology. He's going to say, hey, I'm going directly to the source, the New Testament, and I'm telling you that there's a problem with the New Testament and that it's historically unreliable. And because it's historically unreliable, that means that Jesus wasn't divine, and there's some forgeries that are going on here, there, and everywhere. And what we're going to talk about today with regards to the variants. Now, to kind of give you a backdrop about Dr. Ehrman, Dr. Ehrman would claim, or does claim, that he was a Christian. He went to Wheaton College, went out to Princeton and studied there, and then in that transition there, he lost his faith, and in 2005 he wrote Misquoting Jesus, Who Changed the Bible and Why. And this was a surprise New York Times bestseller in 2005, and it still to this day holds pretty good. I mean, if you talk to a lot of skeptics, if you talk to a lot of people, it's maybe they haven't read Misquoting Jesus, but a lot of the arguments that have been presented in Misquoting Jesus have now penetrated the culture that we live in. So it's important that we address those objections that are made in that book. And really, from this point forward in our study, that's what we're going to do over the next 2 or 3 episodes. So Ehrman makes the now famous claim against the reliability of the New Testament. And this claim is that he says there's 200,000 to 400,000 errors, also known as textual variants, in the New Testament. And he's not the only one. Like, there are a plethora of scholars that say that. And what he mentions in Misquoting Jesus is, hey, there's only 138,000 words in the whole New Testament. I mean, think about that. 200,000 to 400,000 textual variants, also known as errors, and there's only 138,000 words. Now, without further explanation, someone could easily imagine, picture a young adult hearing this for the first time and not being prepared for it because they never got the training when they were in the church, when they were at church growing up. Or they grew up in church and just never heard it. Imagine that every single word could be in doubt. And with some of these words, they could have 3 to 4 different alternatives. So you can see and we can understand that to the untamed eye of a young adult who's in college or high school, this is absolutely positively earth-shattering stuff. And it's not just earth-shattering stuff. It's faith-shattering stuff. And so the question that you have to answer, if you're watching and you're a Christian, and what I have to answer is, how do we deal with this issue? Can we even deal with this issue? I mean, is Ehrman right in his assessment that there's 200 to 400,000 errors and there's only 138,000 words? And so really, pretty much every word in the New Testament is within question or has some type of alternative. So this is how we answer that. We have at our disposal over 5,700 Greek manuscripts, anything from small fragments to entire New Testaments, and we've discussed that in the previous episode. And we also have Old Italic, Latin, Syriac, Georgian, Ethiopian, Armenian, all types of manuscripts from different languages, from different parts of the ancient world. And some of these are the oldest translations that don't differ with regards to length and detail of the Greek manuscripts. Now, here's the thing, and this is what Craig Blomberg says in his book, The Historical Reliability of the New Testament. I love this quote. He says, "Now, uninterpreted statistics can easily mislead. So can wrongly interpreted statistics." And he goes on to say that if there were a small number of manuscripts, ancient manuscripts of the New Testament with 200,000 variants, we should have cause for alarm. But we don't, and we shouldn't be alarmed. he says, hey, these variants are actually spread among 25,000 manuscripts. And so what does this mean? This means that as you spread the 200,000 variants across 25,000 manuscripts, on average, what Blomberg says is that that's 8 variants per manuscripts. And he goes on to say, of course, one error may be repeated in dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of manuscripts, but that doesn't make a given manuscript any less reliable. That is simply due to frequency with which an error in it would duplicate elsewhere. Now, he also goes on to say that even if Ehrman's estimate of 400,000 variants were absolutely positively true, what would that raise the variant per manuscript count? What would that look like? It would be 16 variants per manuscript. And so as we view and as we look at this information, what we can understand is that what Bart Ehrman has done and what your pop skeptic will do is they will use this number and they will say, look, everything here is in question. And if you've only got 138,000 words, but you've got 200,000 to 400,000 variants, how can you trust what's going on here in the New Testament? How can you know that that's historically reliable? Why shouldn't you doubt everything that's in the New Testament from beginning to end? Well, the reason that we don't doubt that, or that we shouldn't doubt that, is because those variants are spread over a wide variety of manuscripts, and that's exactly what you would expect. Now, if you had only 1,000 manuscripts with 200,000 variants or 400,000 variants, that would be a big issue. But because it only averages out to 8 variants per manuscript, that doesn't on the surface seem to be a big deal. And this is something that we're going to talk about in the next episode. The question that we next are going to answer is this: how significant are those variants? What kinds of variants are we looking at? So, just on the surface level, guys, we shouldn't be scared when the skeptic says, oh, we've got 200,000 variants and you only have 138,000 words. Understand that that's spread throughout thousands upon thousands upon thousands of manuscripts that we've collected over time, and that number alone should not deter us in understanding that the New Testament is reliable. Next episode, we're going to say, okay, now that we can understand that there's only 8 per manuscript on average, what are we specifically dealing with? What are the biggest variants? What are the most significant variants? And what are the minor variants that we shouldn't worry about? So, hey, just remember, when the skeptic comes to you and says 138,000 words, 200 to 400,000 variants, just go back and tell them, hey, that's spread over 25,000 manuscripts, which averages out to anywhere between 8 to 16 per manuscript. So, no need to be afraid of that. The New Testament transmission is still very reliable, and as we have seen and as we continue to move in our study, what we will see is that the New Testament is still historically reliable. Thank you so much for being with me today. Greatly appreciate all of those who support us in any way, shape, or form. Remember, go and subscribe to the newsletter, and if you haven't checked out Jack Lipsy's new podcast called Culture Cast, go do that sometime today, sometime this week, and most importantly, remember, equip yourself to engage culture. This is Dean Meadows signing off. God bless. Have a great day.